The Bible sometimes uses figures of speech that portray God in human terms, anthropomorphisms. Why can't all the verses that speak of God changing his mind or emotions be understood along these lines? Classical Theism largely relies on the understanding that all passages describing God as changing are anthropomorphic. Two things may be said in response to this view. Why assume change is anthropomorphic? First, there are certainly passages in the Bible that are figurative and portray God in human terms. You can recognize them because what is said about God is either ridiculous if taken literally, example God has an outstretched arm, Deuteronomy 4:34, God as our husband, Hosea 2:2, or because the genre of the passage is poetic, example God has protecting wings, Psalm 17:8. However, there is nothing ridiculous or poetic about the way the Bible repeatedly speaks about God changing his mind, regretting decisions, or thinking and speaking about the future in terms of possibilities. These passages usually occur within the historical narrative sections of Scripture. They only strike some as ridiculous because these readers bring to the text a preconception of what God must be like. Once one is free from this preconception, these passages contribute to the exalted portrait of the lovingly sovereign God in the Bible. As we saw in chapter 2, such passages occur quite frequently. Though we often fail to see it because of how church tradition has colored the way we read the Bible, the openness of God and of the future constitutes a major motif of Scripture. It is not at all on par with a figure of speech in which God has an outstretched arm or protecting wings. What does the motif of openness reveal? Second, even when the Bible speaks anthropomorphically and figuratively about God, it is speaking truthfully about God. The expressions genuinely tell us true characteristics about God, albeit in a non-literal fashion. The arm of God refers to God's true strength, for example, while his wings describe his true protection. But if we decide that the various accounts of God changing his mind are all figurative because we have already decided that God can't really do such a thing, what truth do these accounts communicate? If God never changes his mind, saying he does so reveals nothing, it is simply incorrect. If God in truth never anticipates that something is going to happen that turns out not to happen, his telling us that he is sometimes surprised or disappointed tells us nothing true, it is simply misleading. Jeremiah 3:6, 7, 19, Isaiah 5:1, 7. Nor can we explain these verses by claiming that they describe how things appear to us but not how they truly are for God, for in many of these passages there is nothing that appears to us. When the inspired word tells us that God thinks in terms of perhaps, that God regretted a decision he had made, that God intended to destroy a city but then called it off, or that God expected something to happen that didn't happen, it is telling us things we would never otherwise know. The verses cannot be speaking according to appearances, for the subject matter of these texts doesn't appear to us at all. All the evidence indicates that the verses signifying divine openness should be interpreted every bit as literally as the verses signifying the settledness of the future. Only a preconception of what God can and can't be like would lead us to think otherwise.